Please be in a spirit of meditation, comfortable in your chair. Be aware of our connections with each other. Be aware of your connection to the earth. And we'll bring a meditation.
Aimless Love by Billy Collins. This morning, as I walked along the lake shore, I fell in love with a wren. And later in the day with a mouse the cat had dropped under the dining room table. In the shadows of an autumn evening, I fell for a seamstress still at her machine in the tailor's window. And later, for a bowl of broth, steam rising like smoke from a naval battle. This is the best kind of love, I thought, without recompense, without gifts or unkind words, without suspicion or silence on the telephone. The love of the chestnut, the jazz cup, and one hand on the wheel. No lust, no slam of the door. The love of the miniature orange tree, the clean white shirt, the hot evening shower, the highway that cuts across Florida. No waiting, no huffiness or rancor, just a twinge every now and then for the wren who had built her nest on a low branch overhanging the water. I found myself standing at the bathroom sink, gazing down affectionately at the soap, so patient and soluble, so at home in its pale green soap dish. I could feel myself falling again as I felt its turning in my wet hands and caught the scent of lavender and stone.
An ode to the spirit of Valentine's Day by way of reflections on the 2016 musical, La La Land. We start on a California freeway, the grand cathedral of unfinished dreams, where traffic sits so still you'd think the city pressed pause on itself. People are dancing on the roofs of their cars, or maybe they only look like they are, because a traffic jam has a habit of confusing impatience with choreography. You know you live in Southern California when a standstill on the freeway feels less like an inconvenience and more like a regular spiritual practice, a forced meditation, a mandatory retreat without meals. In the movie, the stuck drivers sing about their shared quest. Summer Sunday nights, we'd sink into our seats right as they dimmed out all the lights. A technicolor world made out of music and machine. It called me to be on that screen. Without a nickel to my name, hopped a bus, here I came. Could be brave or just insane. We'll have to see. Aspiration. People have come to be performers. We are inside the drive of ambition. In this movie, it is about performing. For us, it might have been about a career, or making a difference in the world, or love and family. Desire is the central thread in a life story. What have you wanted in this journey? Back in the movie. There, in the jam, in a dull little Prius that embodies every quiet hope that ever moved anywhere or took any risk in the service of longing, our protagonist, Mia, is practicing her audition lines, pouring her soul into the rearview mirror, not noticing that the traffic has started to move. A stranger behind her leans on the horn with the righteous indignation of a man who distrusts hybrids. Sebastian, our other lead character, Seb for short, in his vintage boat of a car, glares with all the intensity of a jazz purist forced to sit through a pop concert. He surges past her, and in the universal language of the highway, she delivers a, I won't, hand gesture, meaning, I bless your journey, but from a distance. And so it begins, like all great romances, in the difficulties of everyday life. Okay, let's reflect on the opening scene. We project our unlived life onto the nearest available human, him honking at her, her flipping him off. We react to them not as they are, but as the inner figure they momentarily resemble, something within that we're not getting along with. Ah, you stranger, you are the embodiment of my thwarted potential. This is how arguments start, and relationships, and musicals. Now we shift. The tempo slows, the lighting softens. We're in a beige casting room where Mia is auditioning with her whole heart. She's crying real tears. And the casting director, with massive levels of indifference, takes a phone call in the middle of Mia's emotional crescendo. Mia stops. The room goes still. Her self-worth dangles in the air like a note that no one hears. Audition rooms, like any kind of job interview, have a very special energy. It's the combination of hope, fear, fluorescent lighting, and a casting director who appears to have left their soul at home. We've all been in that room. The situation where someone else's distraction, or maybe someone else's bad day, gets us into questioning our entire purpose. Psychologically, the wound of dismissal awakens our insecurities. We walk out thinking, maybe the dream was never mine to begin with. But sometimes the situation can simply be the inner life calling us into a deeper place. Okay, the scene shifts. A Hollywood Hills party, nighttime. String lights glitter on a hillside mansion full of sequins, strangers, inflatable flamingos. You get the picture. Mia's roommates swirl around her, shimmering like cosmic cheerleaders, singing their conviction that the person with connections will notice her this time. Here's the lyric. Someone in the crowd could be the one you need to know, the one to finally lift you off the ground. Someone in the crowd could take you where you want to go. If you're the someone ready to be found, the someone ready to be found. The project is, in psychological terms, a questionable outsourcing of validation. We all know painful gatherings, we've been at them, where the only one showing any confidence is that inflatable flamingo in the pool. But Mia smiles, plays along, ends up walking home because her car has vanished into the tow-away zone. Elsewhere, Sebastian, Seb, sits at a piano in a restaurant decorated like Christmas exploded. The boss demands strict adherence to Jingle Bell mediocrity. You know how that is? Something? Okay. Seb nods respectfully and compulsively disobeys, jazz pouring out of him, wild, aching, alive. And Mia, walking by, remember her car got towed away, hears the music in this nightclub and walks in, gravitationally pulled by the music. She enters the restaurant, eyes soft, soul leaning forward, just in time to watch him get fired. Sebastian gets fired for playing real jazz, a little like being asked to leave a potluck because you brought a casserole that was just too sincere. Mia approaches Seb, tries to speak, but he sweeps past her with all the grace of a man whose pride has stubbed its toe. So they meet, but only long enough to completely misunderstand each other. All right, months pass. Time moves on. This is Los Angeles. Auditions, parking tickets, seasons you cannot recognize. Then Mia sees Seb again at another party. He's playing in a pop band that represents the kind of music he would like to destroy. After the party, they walk together, past street lamps glowing like votive candles, to a hill overlooking the city. The air is lavender. The silence stretches. Then, because romance in a musical requires performance, they begin to dance. Not perfectly, not professionally, two fragile beings awkwardly tapping on concrete, practicing the courage to be seen. In musicals, when two people fall in love, they burst into dance. In real life, when two people fall in love, they burst into logistical discussions about schedules, parking, and whose turn it is to buy the almond milk. Thoughts here. When we dance with another person, whether it is ballet or conversation, we're also dancing with the unlived possibilities within ourselves. The beloved, the other, becomes a portal, a mirror, a choreographer to our subconscious. It's courtship, and it is the emergence of neglected parts of ourselves that need some tender affection. In the next scene, Seb appears at Mia's job. She had mentioned where she works. A little tricky because she works inside a studio. He had to kind of sneak in the studio to get there. She shows him where she works, a movie set, a place where fiction wears the clothes of reality. Seb invites her to a screening, a film about rebellion, destiny, doomed youth. At the screening, their hands gravitate toward each other. Notice that this whole setting, this whole sequence is within make-believe. Love, attraction, friendship happen in the richness of our imagination. We are meeting another person, partly. We're running into our own shadows, into our own longings, into our own fears. We're running into ourselves as much as we're meeting another person. The projector fails. The universe itself interrupts the moment, and they drift away. They couldn't watch the movie, so they go up to the Griffith Observatory, where the cosmos invites them to dance again. But here, we're in an observatory, stars, and so as they dance, well, we're in a movie. They float up into, they are in and amongst the stars. The music swells, the constellations blink, two humans float in a metaphoric choreography of budding romance. This is the sacred moment when falling in love feels like spiritual awakening. The ego expands, touches the higher self, and briefly believes it can fly. Well, the relationship develops, they move in together, and of course, there is a song. City of stars, are you shining just for me? City of stars, there's so much that I can't see. Who knows, is this the start of something wonderful or new, or one more dream that I cannot make true? Seb encourages Mia to create her own role. She's so frustrated with those auditions and the distractions. Write your own piece, something you can perform. So she writes a one-woman show, a vulnerable revealing of courage and terror. She puts it on. Very few people attend. Meanwhile, a friend has invited Seb to be in a hot pop band. This group is doing well. They're tight, they're successful, but it's not the music he loves. But it pays. Musicians call this selling out. People like us call it Tuesday. Here's a paradox. The dream needs money, but money can ruin the dream. They're living together mostly on shared hope, and mismatched schedules. They're very ambitious, they're very driven, they're very busy, they see each other, but it's stressful and don't get enough sleep. You know how this is. And the fights start, not loud at first, but sharp. She is frustrated with him for giving up his dream, and he says, but you wanted me to, and she did. She wanted him to be a little more successful so he could have a place anyway. He accuses her of liking him better when he was failing. It's not true. It's hurt feelings. Words land like broken glass. Lots of relationships could have made it if there were just more breaks from the stress of making life work. On the night of her play, Mia stands backstage trembling. Her heart beats like a Morse code message to the universe. Please let me matter. As I say, the audience is small. Anyone who's ever hosted a workshop, a book reading, or a training knows the unique holiness of an audience of 3. The few whispers Mia can hear are not kind. Seb didn't make it. That band, there was a photo shoot, they hadn't notified him, he had to be there. Hurt feelings all around. This is the last straw for Mia. She breaks. She abandons her ambitions. She returns to her hometown, a place where she had once looked out a window and believed anything was possible. This part of the story is called The Descent. The necessary spiral into the emotional underworld. Every dreamer must encounter this night. It is the grave from which authenticity is ultimately born. Seb hears about something that is just right for her. He knows she's left, probably to her hometown, Boulder, Nevada. It's a ways. He rushes to find her. He drives to Nevada because despite everything, love remembers details. He brings her back for one more chance in the audition room. They ask Mia to tell a story. She breathes, her voice quivers, and she sings a song about her aunt, about broken dreams, about the wild beauty of those who dare to leap anyway. The song starts as spoken memory. My aunt used to live in Paris. I remember she used to come home and tell these stories about being abroad. And she goes on. It is a performance. It is also a breakthrough. It is finding her voice. It is Mia finding her footing. The narrative now takes a leap forward. It is 5 years later. Mia is now a famous movie star, married, but not to Seb, and mothering a child who carries her smile. One night she enters a jazz club and sees the logo for the club. It is a little thing she sketched years before for Seb. Seb sits at the piano. He sees her. He plays their theme, the melody of a love that shaped them, even as it could not hold them. And then something follows that can happen in a romantic film. It is a fantasy sequence, an alternative ending, a parallel reality, an epilogue, a dream of the life they might have had, a montage of perfect dances, perfect timing, perfect destiny. But when the song ends, reality returns. They smile, a soft thank you for the dream smile, and part. It is beautiful, and it is enough. 5 action steps. 1, remember a dormant dream, a dormant dream. La La Land invites us to notice dreams we once held dear and quietly set aside. I mean, this one's about performing. You think back to what it was for you. Set aside 10 minutes this week to journal about a passion or aspiration you once pursued. Ask this question: what part of me lived in that project? Is any of that specific longing still calling for some bit of expression today? 2, identify the supporting characters in your story. Mia and Sebastian flourish because they briefly believe in one another at a crucial moment. Reflect on the people who have encouraged your growth. You know, an old boyfriend, an old girlfriend, that something that didn't work out could have made a crucial contribution where you learned something about yourself. And maybe it ended badly, but the treasure is still the treasure. Was there someone who made a difference, even though the connection did not last? Write a note of gratitude as a meditative exercise. Whether it is sent or not is not crucial. Write the letter as an honoring of that experience. 3, practice an audition. Mia's final audition is essentially the offering of her authentic self. Create your own symbolic audition ritual. Could be reading a poem aloud to an empty room, sharing a story from your life with a trusted friend, presenting one honest page of writing to your journal. 4, name the alternative life within, that epilogue, that fantasy sequence. The film's epilogue shows that life that might have been is a poignant imaginal truth. Here's the action. Gently sketch in writing, drawing, or just in your imagination an alternative life path that you might have lived. What qualities or values from that imagined life can be brought into this life? And finally, 5, create a personal theme song moment. The music in this movie helps the characters stay connected to their deep emotional essence. Choose a song that stirs your sense of purpose or belonging. Listen to it intentionally, eyes closed, breathing steady. Let it become a brief, reflective practice, connecting you to the vitality that fuels your current calling. And so we come to the end of this cinematic reflection, having watched 2 dreamers rise, collide, break, and then bless each other. In the act of becoming, Mia finds her voice, Seb finds his music, and the love between them, imperfect, unfinished, forever unsentimental, becomes a lantern they carry into their separate futures. Dreams are fragile gods. Failure can be the compost in which purpose grows. Those stories Mia shared from her aunt living in Paris. The lyrics remind us to value the chances we have taken, regardless of how things turned out. I remember she told us that she jumped into the river once, barefoot. She smiled, leapt without looking, and tumbled into the Seine. The water was freezing. She spent a month sneezing, but said she would do it again. Here's to the ones who dream, foolish as they may seem. Here's to the hearts that ache. Here's to the mess we make. Namaste, blessed be, and so it goes.